Please, go ahead. Thank you very much.
All right. Buenos dias. I'm back. And
Sorry.
no problem. So we did some stuff. We got an app live, and we're gonna quickly toss Redis on it, right? Because I want to show you guys what I would be doing if I was like someone was paying me a bunch of money to make an app for them, right? And I say that like I'm saying that with an if for a good reason. Open source is not always the key to fame and fortune. All right, so if you look at the right, or if you look at the screen, I'm in my Heroku add-ons, and I'm gonna grab just any of these Redis providers. They're all pretty good, and as long as they're free, they know how to make me happy. Cool, I added something, and now I have Redis. So I will go back to right here, back to my Heroku app. And now I can see I have Redis to go plugged in. And if I go back to my environment variables again, Redis to go URL. All right. So I can go in to config session.js, and I'm going to uncomment this line that's labeled adapter:redis, right? And what that's saying is, look, for the session adapter, use Redis. This is a different kind of adapter than the waterline adapters, the Sails database adapters. Some point, that will not be the case long term. But the thing is, there's actually like at least 20 of these things out there already for Connect, and which is kind of this low-level thing. And so we decided, what the heck, let's use those. So if I go in here, I will paste my little thing that I got from before. This doesn't support the URL, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to take it and break it apart into my host, which is this part, my path, my port, which is here, my username, which I believe is this, and looks like this. Pass looks like this. And the DB, I think we don't actually need to configure it, but we'll find out in a second, because it'll just not work if we do. So we'll uncomment all this stuff. We don't care about the TTL right now. And the prefix, the default one is fine, because we just don't know what that does anyways. And then we're going to go in here to sockets, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set the Redis adapter, we're going to set the host, we're going to set the port, we're going to set the password, and we're going to set the user. And that user may actually be the DB. We'll find out in a second. So there's our user. So we'll just, copy this all and bring it over. It's a lot easier. So there we go. We'll get rid of this port, this host. And this should just work, right? So we'll see. If we can lift this, it means that it works. And it definitely doesn't work because we need to install the Connect Session Redis adapter. So once again, we'll just sort of copy and paste what it tells us to do. We need to bring in Socket.io Redis, and then we need to bring in Connect Redis, but one thing at a time. We'll paste that first, and then we'll look up here, and it's saying copy and paste this. So we'll do that too as soon as the first one's done. All right, so we paste that, and we hit -- save as well. That's going to bring in the Connect Redis adapter. And so now, once that's installed, we have access.
Yeah, just one sec. We know that there's some weird static happening right now because of electricity, electromagnetism. So we're going to test what happened. Just one sec. Don't panic. Everything's going to be fine.
All right, how's it sounding now? Sounds okay. Smooth talk, smooth thinking, really masculine thoughts. Deep voice. How's it working? Do I sound like an adult?
Yeah, we're about to figure it out. Luck is an evil thing.
It sounds perfect. You guys are saying it sounds perfect.
Yeah, alright, keep going. Let's go.
All right, we are going on. So, anyways, I wish that would have happened right when it was npm installing, because that takes forever anyways. But anyways, the moral of the story is the npm install went really fast because this place has awesome internet because it's like this really cool studio. But we're gonna, we're gonna commit this and push it up, and we're gonna see if it works on Heroku. I guess we should test it first. Always a good idea. So we'll lift. It's talking about I need to go in and it's trying to connect to MongoDB locally because I didn't specify that URL that I needed to copy. So I'm going to do that. Go back into my config variables, copy the MongoLab URI, and I will do MongoLab URI equals that, sales lift, and it's still telling me some stuff about my Socket.io adapter configuration no longer being supported. And what I need to do is actually change Redis to Socket.io Redis. Luckily, Sails figures this out for me. So we can go ahead and run with it. I'll change it. This won't take effect yet. But if I paste that right there, it'll be ready for next time. And in the meantime, it doesn't hurt anything. So if we go back here to my local server, this is the real database. I should be able to create unhappy faces. Looks like I was able to. And my unhappy face is there. Awesome. Someone thinks Rails is better than Sails, which I wasn't laughing at that. I was laughing at the other stuff. All right. So, anyways, let's keep going. We have this production stuff pretty well sorted out now, I think. So we're going to go ahead and just publish it and push it out. So set up Redis, bang. We'll push that out. Because we're pushing it to GitHub, it's going to get pushed out to Heroku. I saw someone talking about testing, which definitely, if y'all want to see some stuff about testing, just star that question, please, so we can cover it in the FAQ. But I want to make sure that we're covering the stuff that's most beneficial to everyone. Okay, so back to our code. We now have a real production app hosted. It's up there. Anybody can delete each other's emojis, though. Anybody can update each other's emojis, add new emojis. This is maybe not exactly what we wanted. So there's really two steps to changing that, right? The vision I have for this particular emo book is that we would be able to have little profiles, right, that belong to you as a user. So, I could have like emobook.io/Mike McNeil, and then that would show all of the emojis that have been posted to me, and only I could delete them or update them. The emojis that are posted to other people's walls, I can post there, but you guys can also delete or edit your things. And we won't deal with like admin stuff right now. We could always add that later. So what would be necessary to do that? First thing is we need a user model. So I could generate just the model with Sails generate model user, or I could just go ahead and make an API for it. It's easy to un-API-ify it by turning off blueprints later, but let's just do this for now. Bam, we got a user API. So I'm going to lift, I'm going to make a user. I'm going to check to see. Oh, I forgot to put my Mongo URL in when I lift. Okay, it's almost there, and it's there. It takes a little bit longer once you have it hooked up to a remote database because it has to go like thousands of miles. Okay, so there's my users. I don't have any yet, but I'm going to make one that has a screen name of Mike McNeil. There I am. So we got users. Cool. Just the other thing, you've probably, if you've seen the original Sails screencast, you might have seen this before, but you can also filter these things, right? So you actually have contains, you have sorting ability. So for instance, if I made a few more users, or let's say I was going to look at emojis, built into blueprints, someone posted old country way, or cut your hair please. Actually, I like that one because I'm in terrible need of a haircut. So I'm going to do text equals cut your hair please, and you can see it found that particular one, right? If I wanted to find any of the ones that contain the word cut, I can do where, and I can just kind of hard code some JSON in here, right? And I'll do text contains cut. So that's the only one that contains cut, but how about the letter C? Well, there's a few, right? If I only want the first two that contain the letter C, I can do this. If I want more things, I can do 5. You know, maybe I want the second page of that kind of result, so I can do, you know, that's the next page. Maybe I better skip ahead. All right, so what is the ideal project to use Sails.js? That is a good question, but I think pretty much any project, for me at least. So back to the list. So you've seen kind of that's what Blueprints provides out of the box. We could really make this stuff set up however we wanted to. We could sort it. We could even go as far as doing kind of like the %sign like stuff that you can do in a SQL database. All of that is implemented with what we call like controller actions, which we talked about before, and they just happen to be using the built-in ones right now. Rather than digging into writing a controller action immediately to start with, and then also tying that to the front end, I just want to show you guys routes first, because that's kind of the last part we haven't looked at yet. So this route from before, you know, we did talk about the home page. There's actually what we call shadow routes, right? Which is emoji, emoji ID, emoji, you know, put emoji ID, get emoji ID, delete emoji ID, and then post emoji, get emoji. So all these are existing for you out of the box because of how Blueprints works. And actually there's more that come about from associations, but I'm not going to talk about that just yet. We're going to use associations though to be able to attach emoji to a particular user. So like, you know, your page is going to have a bunch of emoji on it that belong to you. But the emoji model is going to have like all the emoji in it in one place. And that's when people talk about things being like relational. Even like in NoSQL, like in Mongo, you still have somewhat of a relational setup because you don't want to have everything be embedded because it's harder to query on. So that's what's happening with Blueprints. If we wanted to turn off Blueprints and just completely disable all the magic we've been seeing, there's a few different things we can do, but what we want to definitely do in production is disable shortcuts, and we might even want to disable the rest Blueprints. For now, we're going to leave them on though. So if I leave this on, it's not going to let me. If I turn off shortcuts, I can't do creates, right? I can do creates with a post request. So I'm going to start this again, show you what I mean. I can do this, or we'll start with what I can't do. I can't do this anymore, right? It's going to say 404, too bad, I don't understand what you're trying to do. But you do understand Sails, actually, you just don't want to let me. So if I go in and then instead of using /create, I send a post request to /emoji. This is Postman. It's a tool that lets you test HTTP stuff. And actually, the creator of Postman or one of the creators of Postman is in the area, in the Bay Area right now. If you're around, you should hang out with him. He's pretty cool. So this is, we're gonna hit /emoji. I'm gonna pass in text, and I'm gonna pass in a happy face and send it. And it's cool with that. I can do that all day long. And this is actually what you're going to want to do from your code, right? You're going to send an AJAX request, a post request to /emoji. Okay, so that's what's up with Blueprints. I'm not going to spend too much more time dealing with that. We're going to leave them on for the most part going forward. So if I want to now get into the front end again and start making some stuff happen. Right now we're talking, it says hello world, this file is named homepage.ejs. Let's go ahead and name it profile.ejs, but I spelled, oh, I did spell it right, good. Okay, so this is profile.ejs. Instead of hello world, let's have it say, oh, I don't know, user.name, okay? And that doesn't exist yet, but that's okay. We'll come back to it. We're going to assume it exists. And actually, better than that is if we just comment that out and use, like, I'll just use my name for now. So that way, it at least looks kind of like what we want it to look like. And so now it's saying, hey, what's going on? I can't render this view called homepage anymore, and that's because I renamed the view called homepage. So if I go to my config folder and then routes.js, or I could hit Command P and type routes.js there, I can go and you'll see it's going to serve the homepage. I'd rather it didn't. I'd rather it served profile, which is right here. And if I refresh the page, nothing happens because I need to kill the server and restart it. And that's because it's a backend change, right? And that's one of the things that makes the server efficient, is that it doesn't have to reload all of your files every time. There's actually a project called Sails Auto Reload that you can check out if you search that on Google. And I'll get you a link right during the next break. And that's an effort to make it so you don't have to kill the server and start it again when you're in development mode. Okay, so there's my profile. The next thing I want is, I don't want all of these crazy emojis, right? Which, not that many of them are emojis, but that one is. I just want that one, okay? I want to be able to filter that. So, and I want to filter it to the ones that belong to me. So if you think about different ways we could implement this, if I went to user, I know I want to have a name, and it's going to be a string. But I'm also going to have like this list of emoji. So we could accomplish this by like keeping track of which every emoji belongs to exactly one user by going in here and saying like belongs to user, and then just do type string, and that'll be an ID. But I'd rather do something smarter, right? I'd rather have, and that's what associations let you do. So you can say that an emoji belongs to user, or whatever you want to call this. Let's call it owner. And it's going to be a model, and it's going to be a user. So this is every emoji record belongs to a particular user. Back over here in user, in the same way, actually I don't have to do anything, but just to be complete, what I can do is say that every so every user then has a collection, a list of emojis that he can use or she can use. So I'm going to do emojis, and I'm going to say that this is a collection of emoji, and that's just the name of my model. And again, I could stop there, but I want to be real specific. So I'm going to go to emoji. I see that I named this thing owner. I'm going to go back to user, and I'm going to say via owner. And this is handy because if you imagine, like, if I had my favorite emojis and then I had like my least favorite emojis, for instance, those are pretty different things. But if I didn't have this via, there's no way that I could tell the difference between these two different collections. Right now, this is like the same thing. So I could say via owner, I could say via least favorite of, right? And then I would have, so now I own some emojis, and I also have some least favorite emojis. Over here, I could have least favorite of. And this is a world where you can only have a least favorite, you can only be the least favorite emoji of one particular user. You might actually want to be able to be the least favorite emoji of many users, and then you could do this many-to-many association, in which case we would say, we would use via on the other side too. And we don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but I just want to show you have that flexibility. And the reason it works this way is so that you can have multiple collections of things associated with each other. So we'll go and get rid of this, but before I do that, I'll post it in the actual course chat so you can see it if you want to try it out on your own later. So back up to API models, drop both these guys in here. Right on. So I'm going to kind of trim this back, keep it simple. I've got emojis. Every emoji has one owner. And so now we're ready to go, sort of. So I'm going to lift the server again because I changed the backend. And I'm going to look at my emoji and see what I get. So every emoji, if I look at emoji number or with this ID, I can see just that particular one. So this emoji could have an owner, which is a particular user. Over in this other tab, I'm going to look at my users, and I see I have a user named Mike McNeil. You can see he has an empty array of emojis. I'm going to open up Postman again and give this emoji to myself. So I'm going to send a put request, and I could do this with /update, right, too, but I'm doing it this way because this is realistically how you do things eventually, right? And I need to assign it to myself, so I'm going to say that the owner is me. And what did I do wrong? The local Mongo thing it's hooked up to the remote database, so it has a bit of a stack up. But this should momentarily work. So it's not working at the moment, but what I'll do rather than getting too deep into this at the moment is look at how I can take what I'm trying to do here and replicate it, right? So the way that these adapters work is slightly different because I'm switching between a string and an integer ID. That can sometimes be problematic. So I'm going to dig in and try changing back to the disk adapter for a moment. If I go into models.js, I can switch this back to local disk DB. I'm going to lift that and see what I can get. So now if I look at my users, I don't have any yet. I can't create them this way anymore because we disabled shortcut blueprints, but I can go in and I can send a post request and make a particular user named Mike. Cool. And then back over here, let me make sure that I'm actually doing the right thing. All right. So I'm looking at my list of users, which is empty because I think I did that at exactly the wrong time. I'm going to try this again. Posting to a user named Mike who got created. Now if I get my list of users, he's there. Okay. So if I go back to my emojis, I'm going to list them. You can see that they're all there. I'm going to add a particular emoji, let's say this happy face. So I can look at it independently like this, just by sending a GET request to emoji/to. So I'm going to associate this now with my user. So I'm going to set the owner to 1. And I'm having the same issue, which is probably because I have this thing linked locally to my version of Waterline, which is in development mode. So I'm not going to go too far down that path right this second, because it's probably not that useful for y'all. Instead, what I'll do is I'm going to switch over to a different approach that is equally valid, a little bit more NoSQL-ish, but is handy in some situations. So instead of using this particular sort of association, what I can do is put type JSON. And what that's going to let me do is just stuff whatever I want in there, right? So I can go back over to here, do the same thing. Now the only thing is it's a little less structured, right? But it is pretty flexible. So if I was going to lift this guy up again, it's doing Mongo again, so it's got to make sure I put in my URL there, because again I have I have this configured in connections.js to use that environment variable. So if I go back now and I look at what we have so far, I'm using the real data from Mongo again, and now I can start storing stuff. So if I want to modify this emoji here, I can actually store the entire user object. I could store, an object of stuff with type JSON, or if I wanted to, I could just store the ID of the particular owner of this thing. So instead of owner1, I'm going to make the owner of this emoji be myself, and post that right there. And yeah, I think that I've probably borked my local Mongo. So I'm going to switch back to Postgres for a moment, or I'm sorry, to local distdb. So the other thing to keep in mind when you're messing around with this is that you have pretty much as much flexibility as you would with Node, right? So at this point, if I happen to know that what's happening here is because I've linked my other waterline instance, or I basically linked with the latest master branch. What I need to be doing is hooked onto the version that everybody else is using. But what you can always do is take this and take something like Mongoose, or take something like you can use the raw MySQL driver if you wanted to, just like you would with Express, and you can call that from any controller. So let's go back to here. And just to explain a little bit about how that works, if I want to, for instance, override the find method, or if I wanted to implement this without waterline, right? Basically, I could go into the emoji controller and I could say that if I want to associate a particular emoji with me, I could say associate with user, and I can make a action. And this is now an endpoint, right? This is a custom endpoint. Because I have action blueprints turned on by default, I can actually hit emoji, or I can hit localhost emoji / associate with user, and it's just gonna run this code, right? It's arbitrary code. So I can put in console.log hello, and in here I will send an object back that's like hello world. So demonstrate that. If I open that up, once it's done loading, and we go to emoji associate with user, see it says hello world, and it logged hello. So it's running whatever code I want. So I can put pretty much any Node code in here that I like. I can require Mongoose, and I could try doing it that way. In this case, what I'll do for the time being is I'm going to take emoji.update, and I'm going to say that this emoji is going to point, it has an owner attribute that's going to point to a specific string. So this is first in an update. If you're going to call, write update from code, the first thing you do is you pass in which emoji are we updating. So I can pass in its ID, and I'll pull that out of the parameters. And then the second thing I pass in is its whatever I want to change. So I want to change its owner to something like that, which is going to be the new owner that I pass in. When I'm done, I'm going to run it. Again, this is one of those times I've got to pull this code up into the future. And then instead of returning hello world, I'm just going to basically say it worked, right? I don't need to send anything back. So now this associate with user thing, I actually am going to be able to get this because by default with action blueprints, there's some magic that makes that available if you add it to the URL. But let's do a custom route. So this is slash, let's call it something different. Let's just say like emoji slash takeover, okay? And this is going to be a controller emoji controller action is associate with user. And I can write it this way, or I can achieve the same thing by writing it like this, just as shorthand, like that. They're both useful in their own way. I found sometimes that, especially when you're first getting used to Sails, spelling it out like this makes it easier to see what's going on. So now, I could set it up like this, where that colon ID, that's going to be my ID parameter. I can also take that and put it back here. You can put this wherever you want, and this works just like express routing syntax. If I kill the server and start it up again, and I go in here and I put a particular emoji, for instance this one, in, then it's going to run my code that I put in, right? And that will update the emoji that I specified and set it to the owner ID that I passed in. But I didn't pass in an owner ID. So what I need to do is, let me be sure my route is correct. So emoji takeover. I didn't put in the right route, which is why I got the 404. So takeover, I'm going to send a GET request to it because we can make any of them. If we wanted to change that, we could specify that in the routes. And I'm also going to send in an owner. And the owner is going to be the user ID of the first user in here, which is myself, which is that ID. So I paste that in. I don't have to mess with the ID parameter because it's already built into the URL. And you can see Postman actually automatically built that in for me because it's a GET request. So I'll send that, and you can see it says 200 OK, and I didn't get any content. That's because it just worked. If I look at that particular emoji now, you can see that it has an owner. So that's referring to me. Now if we go back to the actual kind of continue back to the train we were going on before, what we really want to do is be able to show all of the emojis that belong to me, a particular user. So that's kind of under user.find. What we can do is, and specifically find one, out of the box we get blueprints doing this for us, but we can actually show kind of what's happening underneath the curtains, right, by writing some code in here. So what I'll do is user.find1 will come from a URL that looks something like this, where it's localhost user, some number or string, and the route itself looks something like that. So that's the route. That's the real value that gets passed in. So this thing here becomes the ID, the ID parameter, like that. So we can take that ID parameter and we can use it to look up a user. So we're going to look up, I could do it like that, or I could just do it where I don't have to have that extra local variable. And then I am going to take the user I found and I'm going to send it back so that we can use it on the front end. So that's kind of a pattern you'll see a lot. What I'm doing there is just handling the case that if there was an error, I'm going to return early so I don't have to mess with else, and I'm done. All right, so this is, in the simplest case, I'll just send back the user. And this is mostly what bootstraps do, right? The only difference is that we're actually going to subscribe as well. So I can call, I can do this a few ways. The best way to do it is like this, where I'm subscribing to a particular user that has that ID. This is only going to work if you have access to a rec, but because we're sending a request to the server, this is what does the real-time magic. This is what's happening in blueprints anyways, but I think it's helpful to kind of like open it up and see. Like it's nothing crazy. It's just all this is doing under the covers is actually subscribing you or joining a Socket.io room. So this is subscribe to socket events. A subscribe to changes to this particular user record. You know, we'll send socket events when stuff happens. Okay, so we'll kill that, start it up again, and look at it, and we'll just take a peek at this particular user. Because we still have RESTful blueprints on, this is actually going to route to that new action that we set up. This ID it's not an emoji though, sorry, user. There we go. So we got the user. We then can take that and show a profile page for it, right? So what I'm going to do actually right now is this user.find1 is going to become the basis for what our new homepage is going to look like. So instead of just showing the profile view, what we're going to do is show a controller, user controller, we're going to show an action, we're going to show find1, and then in here, instead of sending JSON back, we'll actually serve a view, and we'll serve the view named profile, and we'll pass something into it called user, which is that data we just got. And this is not going to be quite as relevant because we don't have access to a socket when we're actually loading the browser, right? Like when I hit the home page, I'm just a human being hitting it in my URL bar. I don't really have, I can't subscribe. What can subscribe is the stuff that's actually loaded when you start the page, that io.socket. Those virtual requests that come from this little boat thing here are what is actually able to subscribe. So just to clear that up, it's kind of can be a little bit confusing at first. Okay, so now that we have a view that we had to kill the server and start it again to be able to do it, and you can actually see that the console is warning me that model.subscribe can't be used by a normal HTTP request. I'm going to load the page, and awesome, there it is. Nothing particularly crazy happened. And I think actually I might want to be a little bit more specific here. So I'm going to go ahead and put git slash just to clarify that this is a get requests only kind of thing. And if I kill the server, start it up again, and then go to the home page. Good. You can see that it loads the page. It makes it to where it needs to serve the view. And even the weird part is, even though I didn't specify an ID, so let's what that ID is going to end up being is a way for us to do like vanity URLs. So what I really like is if I went to like this URL and I went to /Mike McNeil and then it showed me the page. But in order to do that, we've got to actually make a new route. So what I can do is put get username, and what that's going to do is make this be a dynamic username, and that's going to match any route. I'm going to comment this out for now. This will use the user controller. It'll use the find1 action. And this username parameter will be the new thing that we kind of care about. This get slash we'll come back to in a second. We're going to make it redirect to whoever's currently logged in. But to do that, we have to know who's logged in. So we'll go to find1 again, and we're going to find the user that has a screen name, which I'll change it from username to screen name. I think it's a little bit better. There we go. And we'll find someone that has a screen name that matches what was passed in. So I could go with that right now, but I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have a screen name property in my user. It's going to be a string. And I think that looks good. So it's going to pass that user that came back in. And what we could do the last step is to go in and actually use EJS, which is server rendered, to put in the user's name, or the screen name. So this is actually going to happen before it ever comes to the client. So before, when we were hitting the Command Option U thing, that was opening the actual raw source code of the HTML web page. That's what's getting built here. So Google will be able to see this, right? So I'll kill the server, start it up again, and when it's done, I'll refresh. And I'll go to /Mike McNeil, and there it is. So, if I try to go to a different place, that user doesn't exist, so I'm getting an error. But if I go back to Mike McNeil, that works fine, right? Okay, so next step is I need to get a list of all of the emoji that belong to me. So what I'm going to do is go into my user controller again, and I'm going to find that list of emoji. So I'll do emoji.find, and to start with, I'll just grab all of them, like we were doing before. So this is going to give me a list of emoji. I'm handling this error. I'm going to, you notice how I had to move this up from being down here to back in here, because this is the future, right? It's further to the right. And when I find a list of emoji, instead of users, I'm getting emojis. And then I can have my user, and I'll have my emojis, and I'll pass them straight down in the view. So in the past, what we were doing is we were hitting the backend from the front end via Ajax and then WebSockets, right? We were fetching that list of different kinds of emoji and displaying them on the page. But if we want Google to be able to see this stuff, we've got to do it this way. So I'm going to find all the emojis that belong to the user with the ID that I just found. And now that I have that, I can kill it and start it up again. And it's still starting. It's started. Oops. And now we're refreshing, and I made a mistake. So it looks like the in here, I needed to actually check to see that this user existed before I stopped, or before I tried to use it. So if the screen name doesn't match anything, there's a problem, right? So I need to check to see if user exists, then continue on. If it doesn't exist, we're going to go ahead and just say, I don't know, not found, right? Okay, so we've got this little page, and this should put the finishing touch on it here. And get it to load again for us. Cool. So if we want this to take place, and I'm showing you this other way of doing views so you can get an idea. If you have something that needs to be search engine optimized, you're going to want to do it this way so that you'll actually have the data on the page, right? So instead of using the front end, whether it's Ember or React or Angular, to do the rendering for you, you can do the rendering on the back end, which means going in here, instead of using ng repeat, I'm going to do a EJS tag, and I'm going to do _.each. I'm going to loop over the emojis. I'm going to take each emoji, and for each one, I'm going to show it on the page. So I'm going to show this little li. So emoji.text. And there we go. I'm going to refresh the page, and you can see those are the ones I've associated with myself. So this is my list of emojis. It's working, relatively the same way, whether we had hit it from the API or not. But we have the difference with this now is that if I hit Command Option U and I look in here, I'm actually seeing these list of emojis built into the page. So there's ways to do this with the single page app approach, but they're pretty new. I know for a while people were talking about how you could how Google was actually running JavaScript. This is not happening quite in the way you would expect. And for context, we actually Sails.js, when you search Node framework, Sails.js is, I think, number 1 or number 2. It just depends, right, on the day. We got rid of our our solution that we're using with Phantom.js for capturing snapshots and serving them to Google, and we immediately just disappeared from search results, and all of the documentation couldn't be found anymore. So it came back, right? After we did, we kind of did some fixes to make it work, but moral of the story is Google definitely is not running JavaScript, at least not without some special stuff that we weren't doing, apparently. Okay. So we need to, we've got this thing now. We have an ability to see for every user which emojis they have. We want to take that and we need to associate some kind of identity with it, right? So we need to make it so that you can log in. We're going to use Twitter here. And then you can kind of have advanced control over your emojis. So I'm going to go to, I guess first let's take a step back and say, what does that even mean, right? If I want to authenticate with anything, whether it's with Twitter or Facebook or with a password, there's going to have to be a few routes involved. There's a route that handles the username and password, and it checks them out, makes sure they match what's in the database or what we have on file, and then it's going to remember something about that user. And the way that it usually works is there'll be a cookie that's in the user's browser that references the session, right? And the session in Sails works just like the session in Express. So when we log in, we're going to be, you hit the URL to log in. You get, if you're successful, you get you don't really get anything. You just are suddenly logged in, because what's actually happening is the response from the server bundles this cookie that your browser sets, and then you can refresh the page as much as you want. You can go to other websites on the internet and come back, and you're logged in for real. So this here, if we want to build that login, and if we're going to do it with Twitter, instead of it checking our database, we're actually going to bounce out to Twitter and then come back. So in order to do that, we need to build up the URL that users can click to go to Twitter. So we're going to add in our profile page here, if you're not already logged in, okay, so if rec.session, you have access to this in your views, if rec.session.me is not present, we're going to show a login button. And we're going to say login with Twitter, make it an A tag or an anchor tag. And this URL here is actually tricky to produce. There's a lot of steps involved in it if you've ever looked at Twitter's docs. Fortunately, we have a trick up our sleeve. So we're just going to put something, right? We're going to say Twitter login URL. And we're just going to cross our fingers and know that we can figure it out. Back up here, we're going to pass in Twitter login URL. And so, cool, we just need to have a way to actually build it. So we'll write to do build Twitter login URL and just leave it there. So the easiest way to do this is with something called Node Machine. So if we go to nodemachine.org and we look at the Twitter machine pack, you can see there's get login URL, get the URL on twitter.com that a user should visit to allow or deny someone into their app, right? Or a user should visit it to either be rejected or to allow or reject a developer accessing their account. So if one of you guys goes to this app, it's going to redirect you to another page, and there's a button. You hit the button, it's going to then redirect you back to the website, back to Emo Book, and at that point you've been authenticated or you've rejected it. So what this project is mainly about is just having an easy way to copy and paste code, because no one wants to actually understand what this does particularly. You just want the code for it. So, or at least that's how I work. So I go in here, I copy and paste this thing, I take all of this stuff that's going to happen afterwards, and I move it to the future, like a time machine. There we go. And now it's inside of this particular future. this is the future where an unexpected error occurred, and if that happens, we're just gonna, freak out and negotiate that error. It's always gonna exist though in there, and these keys are the kind of the WTF factor. So to make this work, let's deal with that in a second. Let's go ahead and get the Twitter login URL. So this is our Twitter login URL. So assuming this all, these things are configured properly, this should just work. Let's start with consumer key. So if we go back to this website we were just on, you can see it says the consumer key is this consumer key associated with one of your Twitter developer apps, and the consumer secret is associated with one of your Twitter developer apps. So I guess I need a Twitter developer app, it sounds like. So I'm going to go to developer.twitter.com/apps, I think. And if I can't remember, I can look at the source code for this thing, this machine, and you can see that I can just copy this URL here and paste it. But it looks like I guessed it right anyways. So I don't have any apps, so I'm going to create an app. This is my test account here. So I'm going to name this app Emobook. And let's see if it lets me. Yeah, cool. So feeling happy, sad, like drawing nasty things. All right, so then website, it'll be emobook.herokuapp.com. And then the callback URL, this is where Twitter is going to redirect after we either hit yes or no. We want to let this crazy Emobook thing see your tweets, right? So I'm going to put in for now localhost 1337, and let's just call it /Twitter. Okay, so there's all this stuff no one ever reads, and you create your Twitter application. You must add your mobile phone to your Twitter profile before creating an application. All right, fair enough. I can definitely do that, and you guys are going to have to see my... Actually, we'll come back to that in a second. Just because also, anyways, a lot of times the process takes too long. So I'll do that on the break. The consumer key is something I configure inside of, or I actually copy and paste from inside of my app that I'm creating. Same thing for the consumer secret, but the callback URL, we just decided ourselves, right? And we decided it was going to be /Twitter. So I'll go to my routes, and I'll make that thing, and I'll make it /Twitter. And I'm going to make that go to a controller. And let's just have it go to the Twitter controller, let's say. And we'll go to the handle, I don't know, call it OAuth, or maybe just handle login. So cool, it's going to be a GET request because it's going to get redirected from the page on twitter.com where the user was previously. So there we go. Well, actually, got to make the Twitter controller. So I'm just going to run Sails generate controller Twitter, just because I don't want to copy and paste a bunch of stuff. It's not that much stuff. And so anyways, in here I go and make this action. So Command P twit. There we go. Handle login. Okay, so here what we need to do is twofold. We really need to, the end game is to determine whether someone actually logged in successfully with Twitter or not. Because anybody could just hit /Twitter, right? It's not secure if we just decide to let you in when you hit /Twitter. So if we want to show you what that would look like, if this was actually just like anybody can log in, we would just put some fake thing in rec.session.me and then hit res.ok. Okay, so that's all it really takes to log in. That rec.session thing is all of the information that's stored about the currently logged in user. So if we wanted to check to see who's currently logged in, maybe we say who am I? What we can do is just return the contents of rec. Actually, we'll just return rec.session altogether. But it's probably easier to see if we do it this way. So there, who am I now is going to tell us, I don't want to forget my comma there, it's going to tell us who's currently logged in. And so by default, this is going to be available like this, get user who am I, because we have action blueprints enabled. We could also make an explicit route in the routes.js file for this, but I'm lazy, so let's just do it this way for now. I'm going to lift the server again. I'm going to hit /user/who am I, and I messed it up. So if I go into user controller, I didn't actually save. So let's try that again. So the server lifts, it's getting everything ready, it's up, and you can see that there's nothing particularly there for us, right? There's no me. And so if I go in and hit /Twitter now, what I'm going to get logged in as is just some fake user. So if I hit /Twitter, it says I messed up because it can't find machine pack Twitter. Because /Twitter is hooked up to the Twitter controller, handle login. Let me install machine pack Twitter. So you just do npm install machine pack Twitter -- save. As that comes in, we'll go back and get ready. And SNTP, Punycode, cryptiles, tons of different dependencies. Come back up again, and now we're going to try this one more time. Okay, so now different error, sent us a 401 response. So what that means is unauthorized. Let's take a look and be sure we're doing the right thing here. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and give you guys this code so you can look at it before we go too much further. Everything up to Twitter login. And I'm going to go through and make this stuff explicit. So I'm going to go into the blueprints, because it's a lot going on, right? It's hard to tell exactly. Anytime you get a little bit, if you get lost or if you feel like you're, with Sails, there's too many things going on, you can always strip it down as much as you want. So if you go into blueprints, turn off actions, go into get screen name, and actually now I can see what happened here, because get / screen name is actually matching before get /Twitter. If I move this up, see, you could actually have a user named Twitter, right? So now it's starting to make a little bit more sense. Nonetheless, I'm still going to go ahead and make everything explicit. So the other thing we need is we have user / who am I. So we'll do get user who am I. That's what we currently have. Maybe we'll just make it get /me. And that'll be controller, user controller, action who am I. Okay, so we'll lift the thing again. And it's coming up, it's coming up, it's up. We can refresh the page. And well, at least we made some progress. So who am I? After I hit /Twitter, this is oops, I need to go to /me. That's right. So I'm that fake person that we added earlier. That's not a real user ID, right? So that's what we're trying to prevent. We don't want to let anybody just sign in, because I can now, I'm logged in, right? This is, whenever we check to see if someone's logged in, all we really do is check to see if rec.session.me exists. So if we want to take this and make it real, I need to finish the authentication process with Twitter. So the next step is to get the access token. So what I'll do is go back to nodemachine.org/machinepack_Twitter. I'm going to grab the get access token machine and I'm going to copy it. And it's always good to read things, but really what this is doing is giving me this access token that I need to know that this is a real user on Twitter. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to paste it in, And same thing, consumer key, I'm going to add those in just a little bit. The OAuth token is actually going to come as a parameter from Twitter. So Twitter is going to actually hit /Twitter itself, and it's going to give us two secret values. It's going to give us OAuth token and OAuth verifier. And they're going to look like this. So OAuth token, OAuth verifier. So then if that doesn't work, we will, awesome. So we're going to do this, and then we can continue on. We'll take this res.ok, push it up there. So now we have this access token and some other metadata. Access token metadata. Some people, sound like, helped me, the rest of the team here on Twitter, so I can grab that from my Twitter account. So I'll go back to dev.twitter.com/apps. I'm going to create this app one more time, Emobook. It's happy, sad, everything at once. All right, website, emobook.herokuapp.com. And the callback URL is going to be, for right now at least, localhost 1337, that's the port, and it's going to be /Twitter. And we agree to all this stuff again. We create our Twitter application, and it still doesn't like it. Yeah, this is my new special Twitter account, so we'll deal with that in a second. Anyways, there's one other step. So we have the access token, we have the secret. These two things are like basically how we know that this is a real Twitter account. We could actually stop right here, right? We could just say rec.session.me equals something, right? I mean, even if it's fake, that's fine, because now we're only the server can do this, right? And at this point in time, in this little spot here in the code, we know for sure that you are a real Twitter user because we got the expected response from Twitter. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to leave that as it is, go to the user controller, who am I, and you can see in who am I, we say rec.session.me, we spit it out. Let's kill the server, start it again, and then we're going to hit /me, and you can see that it actually still says the old thing, and it still says the old thing because I have Redis hooked up. So if I normally, if you don't have like a real Redis hooked up on the server, I'm going to go in and configure that so you can see it. For my session, if I turn this off, every time you kill the server and start it up again, you're actually going to wipe the session. So anybody who's logged into the server is going to now no longer be logged in. So you can see what happens there. It just gets empty, right? If I hit /Twitter, though, it's failing because I didn't actually provide a valid consumer key, right? Which is the thing that I need to get from Twitter. But what that flow looks like is I'm able to go back and let me kill the server, start it again. Okay. It's not quite there. There it is. So I'm currently logged out, right? Because I am no longer attached to this Redis instance. Let me just kill this and start it one more time. Okay, so let's just, for a sanity check, go to the profile, and right, what's happening right now is that every time we try to show the profile, we're trying to get the information from Twitter. In order to do that, we need that consumer key. So I'm just going to go in here and do it. So we'll go to Twitter, go to my settings, figure out what it really wants from us here. It wants us to read an article about adding your phone number. That seems like a lot to ask, but we'll see if it's in our security settings. And we'll just search for phone. You know what? We'll see if we can Send login verification request to my phone. You need to add a phone. This is looking better. Oh my gosh. And we did it. And we are done. It's already associated with another Twitter account. And so I guess we'll have to come up with a different phone number. We'll follow up with that after the break. Anyways, the last step I want to show you with the Twitter is getting the user profile information. So this is how we can actually get your picture from Twitter, or get your real screen name, right? And what we get from this is something that looks like this big object here, where we have a screen name, we have a profile image URL, you can get the banner image, you can get the location, whether they have a protected account or geo-enabled, you can get the number of friends, which is actually just Twitter's way of saying like two-way follower connection, meaning you can private message each other, the number of followers, etc. So this is kind of our end game because we want to be able to show who you are. We'll go in and paste this. So instead of just logging in as nothing, we'll also get this information. We don't need to require Twitter again because we already have it above. We're going to pass in the screen name that came back from access token metadata. And I know this came back because I can look on this website and I'll go to get access token and I can see that there's actually the screen name that comes back in the result. And the cool thing about the Node Machine project is that I know that it's always going to be an object like this, right? Like no matter what, this access token metadata will look something like this. So it's not going to tell me it cannot read property whatever of undefined. So access token dot screen name, same thing for this, access token dot access token, and then this is access token metadata dot access secret. So that information is how I'm going to be able to get the stuff, right? Get all the goodies from my Twitter account. So last thing, I'll move this in here, and I'll set rec.session.me to, instead of just something completely random, I'm going to set it to my Twitter username. So it'll be access token metadata dot screen name. And then I'm going to handle the error. And so that is kind of like the whole flow. We're not even using the database right now for login, right? We're going to want to deal with that in just a second. But before we do that, let's follow one other step. All these things, these consumer keys and consumer secrets, once I get my phone number figured out in a little while, I'm going to have to go in and replace every one of these, right? But what would be better is if I could have some kind of like custom config. So I'm going to take this thing, and instead of having it exist everywhere, I'm going to set up sales.config.twitter.consumer-key. And it's actually pretty easy. You can basically throw anything you want in here. So you just make a twitter.js file in your config folder. You say module.exports.twitter equals an object, and then you attach whatever you want in here. So I can say consumer key. I'll put in that fake one. Consumer secret. I will do the same thing. Consumer secret. Paste that thing in there. And one other thing I think we can configure, and that is the callback URL. Because once we deploy this on the server, it's not going to be localhost anymore. But at the same time, we have to tell Twitter, hey, this is where I want you to redirect back, because Twitter doesn't know where this came from, right? Twitter doesn't know where your server is unless you tell it. So I'm going to take that, sales.config.twitter.callback URL, and I will dump that in there. Callback URL. Same thing here, sales.config.twitter.consumer-secret. We can copy and paste a little bit for that part. And I think we can even copy and paste here. So sales.config.twitter, consumer key, consumer secret. Okay, so now we have this configurable thing. We don't actually know what those values are going to be yet, and that's totally okay. And it's kind of like actually a good thing, right? Because a lot of times, if this wasn't just a total bogus account that I'm about to hook up, like, I don't necessarily want to check in all of my credentials and make them open source, right? Or even just expose them to other people on my team. So what you can do when you lift, just like we were doing with this Mongo Lab URI, we can actually make this part of our sales config. So anything in sales config, you can actually put a sales underscore environment variable and set it that way. So sales underscore Twitter underscore underscore functions as a dot here. So like, Twitter is an object. We need the consumer key. So we can set it like that if we wanted to. Not that we actually know what it is anyways, right? So after the next break, we're going to come back and I'll have plugged in a real phone number. We're going to, or I'll find one, somebody around here is likely to have a phone, and we'll get the Twitter app configured and logging in, and we'll redeploy.